Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. I'm your host, Patsun, and today we're gonna be taking a look at r/relationships, where a wife now regrets opening the marriage because her husband is doing much better without her. Let's begin. Our first story is from Reddit user Incredibly100.
So this happened a few months ago, and I still think about it. It was one of those rare moments where the universe actually balances out a situation perfectly. I live near a park where a lot of people from the neighborhood go to relax, walk their dogs, or just hang out. There's also this homeless guy, I'll call him Tim, who's been living near the park for a while. Tim's actually a pretty nice guy. He doesn't bother anyone, always picks up after himself, and even helps clean the park sometimes. He's got a little spot with a bench and some blankets, and that's where he stays. People in the community sometimes bring him food or coffee, and he never asks for anything. Well, one day I was out walking my dog, and I saw this woman, classic Karen vibes, marching over to where Tim was sitting, minding his own business. She had one of those expensive yoga mats under her arm and a tiny dog on a leash. You could just tell she was looking for a reason to cause trouble. She stops in front of Tim and starts berating him about how he shouldn't be in her park, that he was ruining the view, and how he needed to get a job and stop being lazy. She was loud, rude, and drawing attention, but Tim just sat there calmly explaining that he wasn't hurting anyone and had every right to be in the park like anyone else. She, of course, wasn't having it. She threatened to call the cops and have him removed for trespassing, even though it's a public park. A small crowd started forming because she was causing such a scene. A couple of us tried to step in, but she wasn't listening to anyone. She eventually pulled out her phone and called the cops, making it sound like Tim was some kind of dangerous vagrant harassing her, which was a total lie. Here's where it gets good. The cops arrive, and this woman puts on her best victim performance, saying how she feels threatened and unsafe with Tim around. Tim stays totally calm and tells the cops exactly what happened, but it's clear the woman expects them to side with her. But the cops don't. Turns out one of the officers knew Tim. The cop says, "Oh, hey Tim, how's it going?" They talk for a minute, and it's clear this officer knows Tim isn't some dangerous guy, just a homeless man down on his luck who's never caused trouble. The cop then turns to the woman and says, "Ma'am, this is a public park. Tim has every right to be here, just like you do." Her face completely changes. She starts sputtering, saying how it's unacceptable that people like him are allowed in places like this. She keeps pushing, asking if the officer can do something to remove him. The cop's response? "Ma'am, if you keep causing a disturbance, you will be the one removed from the park." Boom. You could hear a pin drop. The crowd was loving it at this point. The woman huffed and puffed, grabbed her dog, and stomped away, clearly embarrassed that her entitled attitude had backfired. After she left, some people in the park came over and gave Tim some food and drinks just to show support. The cop hung out for a bit to make sure everything was okay and chatted with Tim like they were old friends. It was such a satisfying moment, seeing this entitled woman get shut down and realizing that just because you're loud and obnoxious doesn't mean you're in the right. Tim's still there at the park, and now it seems like people look out for him even more. Justice served.
Our second story is posted by a throwaway Reddit account.
So basically our relationship was good and we still loved each other very much, but things had started to feel a bit stale. I had read online that opening your relationship can help bring some more life into it.
That's stupid! You're stupid! Stop being stupid!
He was at first hesitant, but agreed after we set down some rules. The rules were that we didn't want each other seeing people we both know, such as mutual friends. We didn't need to tell each other about random hookups, but we did need to tell each other if we started seeing someone beyond just hookups. Nothing really happened for the first month, but then I started hooking up with guys on dating apps, and a few weeks later, my husband started having a few hookups every now and then. After 2 months, I met this guy at work, and we hit it off. He showed interest, and I told him I was in an open marriage. He didn't mind, and we started dating. For about a year, this went on, and my husband only had hookups. Then he told me he started seeing someone called Max. I was excited for him and asked some questions, basically asking where he met her and if she was cute. He was a bit awkward around the questions, but answered them, saying they had met at a club and that he found her very cute. This again went on for about 2 years. My husband had met my partner Jake and got on very well. I still had never met Max and had seen very few pictures of her, but my husband seemed happy. One of the things that first pushed me to consider an open relationship is that I'm pretty kinky, and my husband was strictly vanilla. He was willing to do some things for me, but not much, which I respected. which is why it surprised me when I found a box of kinky things such as outfits and toys that were not mine. I brought it up with him, and he seemed embarrassed and told me that he had gotten them for Max. I asked if we could do some more kinky things in the bedroom. He said sure, but when we did it, he didn't seem too into it. Well, about a month ago, Jake told me he had to move country as our company was transferring him. He said he didn't think he could handle a long-distance relationship, and while he loved me, he wanted to break up for now. I was in pieces, and my husband comforted me through it. Jake left the country yesterday. Today, I sat my husband down and told him that I wanted to close our relationship, that I hadn't seen anyone else since I started dating Jake, and that now that he's gone, I only want him. He got quiet and told me he doesn't want to. This shocked me, really. He explained that he really liked being with Max and doesn't want to end things. I didn't really understand because he doesn't talk about her much or bring her around, so I didn't think it was that serious. I told him again that I wanted it to be just us, and that if he continues to see anyone else after this point, I would now consider it cheating. He told me I'm being unfair, but I didn't want to listen anymore, and I told him to get out. He grabbed some clothes and left. I thought he would stay at a friend's house, but have found out after calling them that he's probably with Max right now, and I'm just so upset. I don't know what to do. How do I convince him this is best for us?
If Jake didn't move countries, you will not want this relationship closed. The only reason that you think this is the best for both of you is because your little boy toy is gone, and things are looking good for your husband, but not for you. You want to close it because you're afraid that he's going to leave your hoe ass. Newsflash, lady, your husband is already planning on leaving you to be with Max. You know, the one that didn't force him into a disgusting open marriage. Now you want to close it because you're depressed? For what? So he could drown in misery along with you, a selfish, narcissistic asshole? Well, I hope that this turns out exactly as it should. Today's final story is posted by a deleted Reddit account.
I'll try to make it as short as possible. So me and my ex-wife Mary, real name because I don't care if she finds out, have been together for 5 years and married for 2. Our relationship was mostly fine, and we always had only one major issue. She cheated on me when we were together since 3 years.
By the end of this, you are going to be crying like a little bitch.
And after a lot of therapy, I decided to forgive her and she to work harder for our relationship. It wasn't an easy decision at all, but I loved her more than myself, and I decided to forgive her. Then, since things were going great and she changed from therapy, I decided to marry her and she accepted. It was the best day of my life, even though that my friends told me that I was insane to marry her because of her cheating and her past. She has a very high body count of over 100, but I loved her anyway, unfortunately. My friends didn't show up for my wedding because they were extremely skeptical, but I didn't care because I was too happy. Her parents too were happy that we worked things out, and the whole wedding and honeymoon was just amazing, and it was like I was living in one of those fairy tales. Then after a year of marriage, she became pregnant, and I was super happy to start a family with her, and the whole pregnancy went smoothly. But then, when our son was born, something was wrong, because he didn't look like me at all, and had just small things of my wife, but really nothing like me. I started thinking about it, and some things were off, like her announcement of pregnancy. When she told me that she was 4 weeks pregnant, I didn't have sex with her for 2 weeks because I was in another country for the sign of a very big client. And then, when I asked my wife to be there when she was about to give birth, she hesitated, but told me yes. So after thinking again and again at all the wrong things, I did something that I don't regret. I took my son for a DNA test while my wife was at work and I was at home with my son. After a week, the results came back and my worst nightmare became reality because he wasn't my son. The same day, I immediately contacted my lawyer, and after explaining to him the whole situation, he started to prepare the divorce papers. So after a month, I served them to my ex-wife and told her that I knew that our son wasn't mine, so don't make things complicated and to just sign the papers. The drama started, and she started to cry, beg me to not divorce her, telling me that she would become better, that we could put our son for adoption. That she made a mistake and all the classic excuses of a cheater, but I put my feet down and told her that I couldn't change idea after I already forgave her once. After 2 hours of this pathetic scene, she finally signed the papers and packed her stuff. She called her dad crying and telling him to pick her up, but without telling him what happened. While we were there waiting for him, she was crying and begging me to forgive her, that she would become better, but I just ignored her. And when her dad arrived, he asked what the hell was going on, and I showed him the results of the DNA test. He started yelling at her and was extremely mad and angry for what she did, and finally, they drove away to her parents' house. Fortunately, in our country, the divorces under 5 years are quick, so in a few months we were divorced, and she got nothing from me, not even alimony or any type of it. The thing is that in those days, and even now, I never cried, shouted, or did any of these things, but I just feel broken and empty inside, like this thing changed something in me. Obviously, my friends, when they knew about this, were happy and started to tell me the classic, "I told you so." And thinking about it now, they were right, but I was blindsided in love with her that I didn't understand the whole mess.
Wow, like a bitch.
And that's what Frieza said.
Months passed by since the divorce, and I still feel like an empty and broken human. But I don't regret doing the DNA test because my worries were right. Now, the issue is that a few days ago, I met some of me and my ex-wife, mutual friends, and we talked a bit about our life changes and obviously about the whole mess. And they told me that my ex-wife is depressed, sad, miserable, and that the affair partner disappeared, leaving her to stay at one of their house. And they asked me if I regret the divorce, but I told them absolutely not, because I forgive once, but not twice, and not a big thing like baby trapping. They called me heartless and cold for not thinking about her even once, and the baby is 1 year old now, because according to them, she still cries for me and still punish herself for what she did because she really regrets her actions. So am I the asshole?
Now you see, gentlemen, this is exactly why you don't become a white knight and start a relationship with a hoe. And more importantly, this is why you should never stay with a cheater. It will always end badly. Going to couples counseling after infidelity has got to be one of the stupidest things you could ever do and a massive waste of money. And you know what? The most disgusting part of this entire story is the fact that this bitch wants to put her own son up for adoption just so she could have her way with OP. What a selfish, disgusting human being. Viewer support is the best way for me to remain independent and continue bringing you these daily videos, which will always be here on my channels for you to watch absolutely free. So please consider subscribing to me on Rumble and on YouTube. Both will be linked in the description box down below. Thanks for listening, everyone. If you even somewhat enjoyed today's story, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, and if you really like it, consider subscribing to PattSun to never miss a future upload. Stay strong.